I would say the greatest life lesson would be, with the business, he always said, don't step on people's toes.
"40 Years of the Business Journal" is sponsored by Compco and these participating sponsors.
So what do you remember about your dad wanting to get involved in the Business Journal? What do you remember about the early days, if anything?
Oh, he just came to me and he said, we need to be supportive. I met Andrea Wood. She has the town in her best interest. She wants to protect and be a good journalist and be given an unbiased view. And he said, we need to have that, because if we don't protect that, people will get information that is skewed. And he said, I want somebody that's going to get in there and give a good, honest representation so people are informed, and we have to be involved. And he said to him and Arnold Collins, we're going to go in and own it. But they're going to let you run it.
Did he tell you how much trouble we were in at that point? That if he didn't save it, we were done?
Oh yeah, he knew that, but that was it. Goodyear had lost leader, their racing division, right, for years. But they had to have a racing division or nobody buy their tires. It was their thing. You know, there's certain things you have to do, and if you could figure out a way to make money, you do. If you could break even, great. If you can, it's really, but the news and having an informed public was more important.
And positive news. It was a time of so much negative news.
Well, I think negativity is easy.
Well, it was the end of steel, though. It was.
You're right. I mean, it was a depressing time, I would say. It was a time where woe is me. It was a victimization time, and we needed to give them hope.
That's right.
Right.
So how old were you, and what did you think about the times at that time? That's 1984. I mean, where was your head?
Well, I remember 77. I remember because I came out of school and there was no traffic. It was the Monday after the Sunday, and there was no traffic, and there was nobody coming, because Sheeton 2 was right across from Glenwood and Boardman High School, and there was no cars. And it was like a ghost. It was weird. It was like overnight, nothing. And I could feel it. I mean, I knew it. And then I never really saw, I mean, Youngstown is very much about having each other's back. I mean, we might fight like cats and dogs, but don't mess with each other. I mean, if somebody comes from the outside to mess with us, we have each other's back. It's really powerful. And I think that we've always been waiting for somebody to come in and save us.
That's right.
And I think we're starting to realize no one's coming. I mean, it took us, 30 years, 40 years?
To realize
50
it.
years?
We started to realize it, but
yeah.
We had so many people that came in with promises, false promises, or maybe they meant well and it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But your dad helped a lot of companies.
Well, I think more than we'll ever know. More than we'll ever know. I mean, Rick tells me things now and then. Rick Friday tells me things now and then that I didn't even know he did. My mother's told me things that I didn't even know. My mother's found out things he did that she didn't even know. I mean, just out of the woodwork. He helped when he thought it, and sometimes he helped and it was enabling. And once he learned it was enabling, he'd pull back. But when he found something, when he gave his money and it made a huge difference, that was, it was a blessing for him. He really, but he always thought, money and possessions were his to manage, not his to keep.
His investment in the Business Journal, how did that coincide with everything else he was doing in the community? In other words, he was active in many different organizations, mm-hmm. and it was always about promoting the community mm-hmm. to him. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on any of the other ways he did?
Well, I want to tell you a story because I think it's important about his character, and actually is a metaphor for what you're talking about. I went and I said, I just came out of school. I was working for Compco. I think I was making $35,000. And I had no rent, no car payment. I had $35,000 in the 80s. That's a lot of money, right? And maybe it was 20 something, but it's still a lot of money. In today's dollars, it's probably 60 grand, And I went on, I said, hey, Dad, I got a car. He goes, oh, cool, what'd you get? And I said, I can't remember, it was SR6. And he goes, SR6, is that a Ford? I go, no. Well, it's not a GM. Is it a Chevy? I mean, he says, is it a Chrysler? I go, no, it's a Toyota. Oh. I said, I'm buying it from Bob Sweeney, your buddy. Huh, how you paying for that? I said, well, I got my salary. He goes, what salary? I go, my salary from Compco. He goes, oh, if you buy that car, you don't have a salary from Compco. So you better figure out another way to pay for it. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I just told you, if you buy that car, you don't have a salary at Compco. So, because he said that money's going to China, going to Japan. I want that money to stay here. You buy cars that are made here, and you support people that work here. And that's how he was. If somebody locally made something, he would buy it here. I remember Rick Blaze. Like, he would go in there and buy boots to support that guy. He had so many darn boots, and he'd give them away. You know, he'd buy boots for people, go in there and buy boots, because he liked the guy, and he thought, what a great kid. He went, and now look where Rick Blaze is at. I mean, I was just in a store in Nashville, and he's got 2 or 3 stores in Nashville. I mean, he's doing great guy, and that business started here in Boardman. And my dad went in there and supported that. And Rick's never forgotten it. You know, that's how he was. He got behind people that had a vision and a dream, and was there for them. And that's what I try to do, in more of a mentoring training way, where he was more like a financial, but he would give advice.
He was a benefactor.
Yeah, I mean,
he did give advice. He gave good advice.
Yeah.
But he didn't get in your way. And when he gave advice,
right.
It was almost he would state it in such a way that you would figure it out.
Yeah, I think what like Fred Smith said is he gives you options. He gave you options. He didn't tell you what to do. He gave you options. And that is, you could do this or you could do that. You could do this and this will happen, or you could do that and this will happen. Up to you.
So how have you seen the Business Journal evolve through the years? What's your perspective?
My perspective is basically I've seen it, very much trying to stay on the cutting edge of technology. When video came in, you started in video. You got a division. You stayed on top of the evolving news business, which kept you in the game. If you would have stayed with just print only, no web, the papers that didn't get into the web, the papers that didn't get into social media, the papers that didn't get into video are done. It's over. You always stayed with the times and were able to get in contact with people and had great hook headlines. If you don't have a good hook, right?
Yeah, you got to be good storytellers.
Well, you've got to have a good hook. I mean, there's no, that's why when you talk with somebody and all of a sudden it reminds you of a song, it's because the hook was excellent. And the same thing with a story. I mean, when the nice thing about the Business Journal is you can look at the headlines and know exactly what that thing's about.
So how are you carrying on your father's legacy?
I would say it's the family legacy. You have my grandfather Poshner, you have my grandfather Smith, you have my dad Clarence. I would say that my dad and my grandfathers always knew that people were having great people and attracting great people that could do things you couldn't do and do things better than you can do. Giving them their own sandbox, having some autonomy is really important, and keeping a culture of respect. And there are certain things you don't violate around here, you're not here anymore. I mean, it's just simple, and everybody knows that. And it works. I mean, it's really simple here. You come to work, you do your work, you collaborate with people, and you're responsible for your sandbox. And it works.
Mm-hmm. What about life lessons?
Life lessons. I would say the greatest life lesson would be, with the business, he always said, don't step on people's toes. It's just like with the theater. We just moved Katie Muma into the marketing division. And I was in the process of getting the logo for the new theater we just purchased. And now I've got to give it to her because she's got to pick the logo because she's going to push the logo. So that's hers now. I pushed it over to her. So giving people authority, autonomy. I would definitely think that understanding how to form trust with people is important. I mean, you got to know what people want. I mean, win-win is BS. It's just not true. Do you get what you want out of this relationship? Do I get what I want? It might be uneven for an outsider, but for us, it's perfect because I'm getting what I want, you get what you want. Sometimes it could be like this, sometimes it's like this. But understanding what people want. Understanding their motive. What is a person's motive? Why do you want to work with me? Why do you want to work here? What's your motive? What's your character? I mean, you can't fix character. And the one thing he always taught me is if you have an insecure person, ask them to leave immediately. Insecure people take you down because they don't want to be wrong, and they will destroy people in a business to be right. So get rid of them, and just say, help them out the door, and they'll find a place where they don't feel insecure. But here, you got to make sure people have the training. Are they able to do what you need them to do, or can you send them and get trained? I mean, you have a good person with great character, very trustworthy. They might need some training, so you send them for the training. Do they have the ability to do it? And the last one is track record. Over time, when you look at their history, what have they been consistent with? I mean, I remember a little trick my dad said. He said, there's a couple things you look for. He said, one is if you really don't know, he said, get the high school transcript from their last semester. See how they did. You know, when they were guaranteed graduation, did they give up when they had it in the bag, or did they continue on? That's one thing you could look at. Number two is always check out, now I know this could be sexist, but it's only sexist for people that are sexist. You know, look and see what the husband or wife's partner drives. If they're not driving an equal or better car, then they think they're better than them, or they take care of themselves over their partner. I mean, he said, and also watch how people pull into the parking lot. If they back in, they're more interested in getting away than coming in. I said, well, what's that have to do with anything? He says, I'll tell you what, if you fell down the steps and broke your leg and I had to get home, do you think I'm going to back into the driveway? I'm going to pull into the driveway. What's more important, me getting into the house or me leaving? And he said that you know, when people are backing into their parking lots, or they want less time to leave and more time to get into the building. So he said, watch that.
That's curious.
And he said, when you walk in the parking lot and all the cars are backed in, you got a morality problem.
A morale problem.
Yep, morality problem. Morale problem. Yeah.
Well, that's just, I never knew some of these little axioms.
Mm-hmm. And he said, always take care of people. Well, we've developed, it used to be, you know, because it was a majority men back in the day with construction and all that. Now, women, we have, you know, half our leadership is women here. I mean, and so now it's partners. You always make sure the person's partner feels appreciated whenever you celebrate. So when our Christmas parties, my grandfather always got a gift for the partners, you know, and made sure that they were appreciated for supporting the person that worked for us, and that we had their back. We also, during COVID, this was something, you know, we always had open offices here since the 50s. And I'll never forget when I was in college and they said how open offices is a new thing. I'm going, we've had them forever. My grandfather said, never, ever have a room where you don't have a window.
Right.
You know, and they found that that's true. And then when they did the COVID thing and everybody started working from home, you know, my grandfather and dad would have said, you know, that's not going to work. I remember talking to my dad. He said, that won't work long term. People need people. You've got to be with people. He said, if we didn't need people, theaters would have died.
Where do you see us in 40 years?
Well, that depends if you keep your eyes on the horizon. I mean, I just had a conversation with somebody that took me out to lunch, and they said, you know, 40 years ago, no, was it 40? Let's see, it was 80, would have been 80, 91. So that's not 40, that's what, 30 some years ago? 30 some years ago, he said, you gave me a book, and I read the book, and now I have a $60 million company. And he said, but I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I've learned every goal I've ever wanted, I've far exceeded. He says, I don't know what to do. I said, well, you got to set a new goal. What scares you? You don't have any goals that scare you. Human beings have to have something to reach for. There's something called the gap and the gain, Dan Sullivan. And the gain is what you've done in the past compared to where you are now. That's where you measure how you're doing. The gap is where you want to be and where you are. You don't measure that, because if you measure that, you're going to be disappointed because you're not there yet. And if you don't have that gap, you have nothing pulling. There's no pull force. Mm-hmm. This is the push force. This is the pull force. So when you have that, you have momentum. And you need both in your life. So you have to have a goal. As long as you keep goals in front of you, where you're on, because you never catch the horizon, right? You always have to have something out there that you can't touch yet, something that scares you a little bit, something that brings you all together. And that's how you basically 10x, because 10xing is easier than 2xing. If you want to double your sales, that's a lot of work. But if you want to 10x your sales, that's a whole different way of doing your business. So you have to think 10x, not 2x. I used to have to go outside of this town to have the conversations I want to have. Because a lot of times when you go and, I can go and talk about my successes and what I'm going through and what I'm doing, and nobody judges me because they're going through the same thing and they want that space to be able to just be, and you root for each other. In certain circles where I was here, you start to talk about yourself and they're like, there's envy and jealousy. Except unless you start to build your circles here and teach people how to appreciate each other and how to have each other, and you start to form those circles here, which I've started to do. Instead of going outside to get what I needed, I thought develop what you need inside, and it makes a huge difference. And I'm starting to have those circles here where I don't have to go somewhere else to get that feeling of being appreciated. Because I know, because we built that mutual respect, that you get that from each other. Because each other needs you. I mean, you like to hear, Andrew, you're doing a great job. That was a great article. Who doesn't want to hear that, right? And you want to celebrate your successes, as well as have somebody that's going to sit there and say, we need to talk about this.
But because you were your father's son, mm-hmm. you had to go out of town to get that affirmation and come back and bring it here.
Well,
not that you didn't get it from your father, but it's big shoes to fill.
Well, there's that whole thing where my father, this is one Rick and I talk about a lot, is Rick Friday and I talk about a lot, is if you're having conversations with people and they're always agreeing with you, one of you isn't needed.
True.
Right? And having discourse is good. It's when it gets personal, you don't let that happen. You need to have discourse. I've seen Rick have some really good arguments with people, but it never gets personal. And if it does, somebody's not going to be here anymore. You just can't go there. It just can't happen. And that's important, that discourse, that because you care and you want to get the best, so that works up like this. And learning that was important. You can't just have harmony everywhere.
"40 Years of the Business Journal" is sponsored by Compco and these participating sponsors.